can we talk about packing? Because if you're not already traveling full time, you probably are wondering how on earth do you pack for months or years on the road? Welcome to the How to Travel Full-Time podcast. I'm your host, Heather Markel. If you're dreaming of full-time travel or moving abroad, but stuck at the emotional, financial, and logistical challenges, this podcast is for you. I'll help you trade overwhelm for information that gets you from down and stuck to up and going. You can dream about the travel lifestyle, or you can live the travel lifestyle. If you're ready to live it, then let's jump in together. This episode comes with a free download. Check the show description notes to get your copy. If up to now your travel has been around vacation or business, you've probably packed a big bag. You made sure you had multiple outfit options because, well, maybe today's business casual or maybe one day you need business attire. And, well, after working all day or sightseeing all day, you're going to need something to change into for a nice dinner. And let's not talk about shoes. Woo! Don't get me started, right? And maybe you even packed an extra bag for all the shopping that you wanted to do on said vacation. Or if you went business traveling, you decided you were going to pick up lots of gifts for people on the way back. Well, when you dream of the full-time travel lifestyle, you probably aren't having visions of you carrying your luggage every place you go. But newsflash, you'll be carrying your luggage with you every place you go. So having big bags and lots of shopping won't work for the lifestyle. This is true both from a weight perspective and a budget one. Okay, with one exception. If you're traveling in an RV or a motorhome, you can bring a lot more stuff with you. And of course, you're going to need cooking equipment and other things that those of us traveling on our own don't bring with us. For today's episode, let's consider the logic that goes into packing for full-time travel, and then you can perhaps begin to understand what to bring and how to pack for it. The reality is that no matter how you're living this lifestyle, the best thing you can do is pack as light as possible. I think that a great place to start figuring out how to pack is figuring out the size of your luggage first. Because if you start with the bag in mind, it's a great way to make less space available for stuff. And that in turn means that you are also carrying less weight. So I travel with a carry-on sized roller bag and a slightly smaller backpack. Now, when I started my travels, I was in Costa Rica. I met this amazing Canadian couple, and they were so inspirational. They were traveling so light. They taught me like the roller. I think there was packing inside of packing. Actually, and I went to Iceland before I met them, and that's where I met this wonderful girl, Valerie, who taught me about rolling, like an army roll, which also saves a lot of space. So there are some great techniques to make your stuff that you do take with you take up less room, and you may want to look into those. You can usually Google those, find them on YouTube. There's some great tips out there. So having that small bag is essential. And I know when I transitioned from, being in corporate and taking vacations to traveling full time, I just couldn't understand how anyone would fit everything into a carry-on size bag, and that's it. And yet that's what I'm doing now. So you've got the bag first, and I do recommend you start with something small. Once you have figured out your bag, then you can start figuring out what you can't do without and balance that with reusing and recycling. Now, I started, for example, shoes, right? Shoes take up a lot of space, and I started by traveling with 3 pairs of shoes. So, one on my feet, which was a waterproof hiking shoe, one that was a waterproof sandal so that I could use it if I went to the beach, but also it kind of worked for hiking as well in warmer weather. And then I took a 3rd pair that was, for all those dressy occasions I figured I would be going to. Well, shoes are really bulky, as I mentioned, so fewer are better. And I learned that I hardly ever need a dressy pair. I think, first off, when I first started traveling, the number of times I went out to a quote unquote nice restaurant were, I can't even think of one. Maybe I went once. I don't know. And now after the pandemic, everyone wears sneakers anyway. So I skipped the dressy pair and now I use 2 pairs of shoes, the one on my feet and one in my bag. Now, I didn't realize until I was on the road how unglamorous the lifestyle is. I learned that my first year of travel, I didn't ever wear any makeup. So again, back in New York in my corporate job, I wore makeup every day. So I just presumed that was a habit of mine and I would just continue that habit. But makeup became one of the heaviest and bulkiest items in my bag. So I no longer travel with it. So if you are a makeup wearer listening to this podcast episode, you can leave those bags of cosmetics at home. You just aren't going to use them. So moisturizer, sunscreen, facial cleanser, sure, but you don't need eyeshadow, lipstick, blush, foundation, toss it all. You probably aren't going to be going to any black tie events, unless of course you are, but most of us aren't doing that. And if you do, rent something for it rather than carrying around a suit or a dress and fancy shoes you're only going to use once. You could probably get your makeup done somewhere rather than carrying the bulk with you. Jewelry is another category that you can just do without because you definitely do not want to travel with expensive or valuable jewelry. It's just one more thing to worry about, and also it can make you stand out in certain places when you don't want to. Who wants to be stressed out that a family heirloom or a valuable ring or a necklace is going to get stolen? I don't wear any expensive jewelry, and I have a cheap smartwatch from Amazon instead of a brand name or fancy watch. Instead of that fancy jewelry, I end up buying stone or fun bracelets in each country I go to. So that's my jewelry, and it's a reminder to me of all of the wonderful places I've been in the world. Now let's look at clothes a little bit. So you're going to ideally plan to wear shirts at least twice before washing them. This is why merino wool clothing is a great investment. And so I actually learned about merino wool when I was in New Zealand. And at the time, of course, I thought, well, it's just a layer to wear underneath other ones so that I don't get freezing cold. But it turns out that merino wool is also great for warmer weather because even if you sweat, it dries really quickly and it does not retain odor. So investing in a couple pieces of merino wool, like some merino wool t-shirts, is really good to travel with for those reasons. So when it comes to underwear, though, I would recommend typically traveling with like 2 weeks worth because in case you don't get to a laundromat or maybe the place that you're staying doesn't want you hanging out, your dirty laundry or you aren't comfortable doing that. So having 2 weeks worth is really helpful. You can rewear the same pair or two of pants or shorts. Of course, obviously that depends on the weather where you're going, whether you're going to have shorts or pants. The longer you travel, the more things you're going to wear out, right? So you're going to wear the same wardrobe over and over. Yep, when I talked about unglamorous, I meant unglamorous. So some of your stuff is going to get holes or get overused and start wearing away. you're also going to get really tired of wearing the same things over and over. So instead of packing multiple items, it's easiest to just chuck out the old, and as you travel, buy something in a secondhand store or buy something new once in a while just to get out of the funk of overwearing the same wardrobe every week. Try to do the one item in, one item out rule so that you don't add weight when you take on the new items. So when you begin packing, generally speaking, this is for clothes and everything else, I would suggest that you divide everything into piles. And the piles would be, I cannot live without this. That's one pile. The next pile is, I might need this. And the final pile is either I don't need this or probably don't need this, not sure. So obviously that last pile can stay behind. The trick here to make your luggage lighter is to also leave behind all of the I might need this category stuff, because it's just weight and probably you're not going to use it. I've learned over the years. I used to do the have to have this pile plus all the might need stuff. And I would be so miserable with all the weight of the might need. I've given, I used to carry a power bank. I started with this giant power bank and it worked really well, but it was so heavy. I gave it away, and I'm still friends with the guy I gave it to in Costa Rica. He's from Nicaragua. So I made his day, but, and actually giving it away also was just made my day. So all of that stuff that you might need, and sometimes things that you actually thought you couldn't live without, it turns out you can. So just be mindful of that as you travel, that when you realize that, just get rid of it. So speaking of, chargers and so forth, electronics is one of the heaviest and bulkiest categories you're going to pack. So if you're working while you're traveling, get the smallest and lightest laptop that you can comfortably work with. If you're going to be taking photos, I'd suggest you use either a mirrorless camera if you want to change lenses. And if you do, use a maximum of 2 lenses. I started traveling with a mirrorless and I packed the lens it came with and 2 other ones. And it drove me crazy over the years. I was like, wow, this was supposed to save me weight. And it definitely is lighter than a DSLR, but it's just too heavy. So that's why these days your cell phone may be a good enough camera, and it's much less size and weight in your bags. So, I was being paid for my photos for a while, and I did choose to use a mirrorless camera for that because, frankly, for my feelings, smartphones just aren't as good for details and zoom. But now I just shed a lot of weight and a lot of bulk by leaving the camera home and just using a good smartphone camera. And if you're doing YouTube videos, your smartphone and a wireless microphone are good enough to meet your needs. So when it comes to traveling full-time, I cannot stress enough that you want to carry as little as possible, both because the weight will literally exhaust or injure you, not to even mention that if you're checking bags when you take flights, they can cost you money. And also, again, the more you travel with, the more likely you'll become a target for theft in some places, which of course you don't want. So that's it for today's episode. And remember, it comes with a free download. So check out the show description notes to find out where to get yours, and have a great week. Thanks so much for listening to the How to Travel Full-Time podcast. If you loved it, please leave a review and let us know. Make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. Check out the show notes for important resources related to this episode, and come visit us at travellifestylecoach.com to learn more great information. If you're ready to get started with the lifestyle, go to moneyfortravelbootcamp.com, where you can learn all the strategies to afford this amazing lifestyle. Talk to you next week.